How did I end up in the position where I am in, where I am the host of LOCKEDON Wolverines podcast? I am the publisher of Wolverines Wire. Well, guess what? I'm going to tell you about some of the events that led me to this point. That's what we're going to do today on this episode of LOCKEDON Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy Saturday. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. And we've done this show before. Some of these stories are things that if you are a longtime listener, you've heard before, but the audience continues to expand. And people ask this question, how did you end up where you're at? So we're going to kind of spend some time doing that. I'm going to tell you some stories here. We're going to do basically 3 stories here and just basically give you kind of a rundown of how I got in this position. It's not necessarily like, well, I did this and I did this and I did this. I mean, part of it's that, but it is some formulation. So we'll give you the background first. That's going to be the segment 1 here. So I was born at, I'm being serious. I was born at the University of Michigan Hospital to a mother who went to Colorado State, Hillsdale, and Washington Community College, and a father who went to no colleges. But her father went to University of Michigan. Her sister went to University of Michigan. So I was a legacy. I grew up singing the Victors. Some of my earliest pictures are of me in Michigan regalia. So I grew up with a great love for Michigan. When it came time to apply for college, I hadn't really ever been to Ann Arbor, but I applied to University of Michigan. Now, I applied to 4 schools with the intention of going to 1. My true backup school was Eastern Michigan because I figured if I couldn't get into Michigan, I'll be as close as possible. I also applied to Western as well as Michigan State with no intention of going to either of those. They just told me you have to apply to at least 4 schools. Those were the 4 I applied to. I was fortunate enough to get in to Michigan and enrolled in the 1999 class. And then I cared more about music at that point, so I dropped out without dropping any of my classes. After having a C average my first semester, my second semester, that average fell precipitously because, as I said, I didn't drop any of the classes. I was just zeros across the board. But 5 years later, I decided to come back, finish my degree. I had to go to Oakland Community College for 2 semesters in order to prove to the University of Michigan that I was ready for it. And then I graduated with a degree in film. And then I moved to Hollywood and with the goal of being an agent trainee at United Talent Agency. And that's precisely what I ended up doing. Ended up being an agent trainee at the United Talent Agency, which was founded by Peter Benedict, a Michigan alum. But once I got to Hollywood, my love for Michigan football had taken over everything. That's all I cared about. I was just working for the weekends. I was just trying to get from Saturday to Saturday and then from January to September every single year. My love for Michigan was undeniable. I was just knee deep in it. So when I decided I didn't want to work in the Hollywood industry anymore, I came home for the holidays at the end of 2011, and I never returned. Well, I returned for a couple weeks, and then I came back for good in the spring of 2012. And then I kind of waffled a bit, right? Like I started doing photography for a political campaign, and that got me on the map, and I couldn't find something else to do. No one in politics wanted to hire me full time. And so I ended up working at a restaurant for a couple years. And in the meantime, I was subscribing to the Wolverine. I was subscribing to 24/7 Sports. And I was reaching out saying, hey, I can do video stuff. I was a producer in college. Like I can edit these. I did these hype videos that ended up on the front page of MGO Blog every year. I think I was the first one that was doing not necessarily narrative hype videos, because sometimes when you're on is clearly like the big one, but I was the first one that was doing ones that were cut together to look like the hype videos you see today that the teams do. And you can't find those anymore because I had to take them off of YouTube in order to monetize. And not that I do that much on my channel anymore, but that's what I had to do. And that at least gave me the in, so that when I started going to the Alumni Association, the University of Michigan, Greater Detroit Club, when I met Rich Hale and Brian Wassman, may he rest in peace, and Shelly Kovacs, I was like, hey, I want a job, a real job, and here's what I can do. And Rich Hale said to me, what do you think about photographing the football bust in December? Now, this is August at this point. And I was like, I don't know what that means. I mean, I know what the bust is, but sure. I mean, I'm in anything that gets me close to the team. So that was the first event that I got to do. I went and shot the football bust. I was in the VIP room, and it felt like the best night of my life at that point. Cause I'm in there, I'm with Devin Gardner, I'm with Jake Ryan. I'm taking pictures of Jake Ryan posting with Greg Madison, and it's just, and then you get out into the broader room, and it's just all, literally all of the players. And I'm sitting at a table with Angelique Shingelis and John Colasar, and I'm like, whoa, right? Like this, I took a selfie with me with Lloyd Carr. He didn't know about it, but I did it. So it just felt like this momentous occasion for me, and it was like, I want this forever. So what ended up happening was a couple months later, Steve Lorenz reached out to me, and he said, hey, man, I know, I was a subscriber already. He knew that, and he was like, I saw that you shot the bust. Would you have any interest in shooting Jim Harbaugh's first time on the sideline, the spring game in 2015? So I went and did that. And he said, hey, we don't have a writing position. I'm not in charge of hiring and firing and all that, but I can offer you a photo credential, and you can do the whole season that way. But he's like, man, I just wish we could hire a couple grinders. And I was like, you know what? I think I can do this writing thing. I think I can do that. So then I started going to every press conference. I started writing. I started just basically being an intern. And I worked as hard as I possibly could, did it full time on top of still being a server and bartender at a Bonefish Grill in Novi, until Steve Wiltfong really pressed the powers that be at 24/7 Sports to create a position for me and hire me full time. And so I went from 2015 being an intern to June of 2016 being a full-time employee of CBS and 24/7 Sports. So that's the path. That's how I got there, was hard work, dedication, a love for Michigan football. That's what got me to that spot, was just I breathed everything Michigan football. And then when it came time to show what I could do, I did everything possible. And that includes doing a lot of video work, doing all the photos, writing articles. I was writing 20 articles a week. I was doing the gallery. I was, all the pictures that were being provided. I was doing recruiting stories. I was going to high school games. I was taking videos and editing together these videos that were put together a little bit more like more of what you see today, right? Everyone had like kind of bad cell phone video before then. People still use cell phone video, but it's a lot better now than it used to be. So that's how I got into the business. Now I want to tell you a story that maybe I haven't talked about as much. And that's about my first real events for 24/7 Sports once I was officially hired. And after that, we're going to talk about the ties that bind, because that kind of plays a part. So we'll move forward. We're going to move kind of backward and everything like that here in a moment. Before we do that, these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. Now, LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free, just like you need to go out there and find that team member to help your program, your business, just like how Michigan attacks the transfer portal. The great thing about LinkedIn Jobs is it's super easy to create a job listing. After you do that, you can add the purple hashtag hiring frame to let everybody know that you are hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates that have just the right skills and experience, so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. Michigan's trying to win a championship by utilizing those transfer portal gems that they found. You can win your business's championship by using your own transfer portal, LinkedIn Jobs. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right. We are here doing a Saturday, somewhat evergreen show. As promised, Again, no promises about another like a post-game show this weekend, but because I have said that it's not going to happen, I feel like that means it's going to. I don't know. I haven't slept well the last couple days, and I'm not going to sleep well tonight. So that's a guarantee. So I don't know what to tell you. Anyway, so my first events. I'm gonna kind of have put a couple things together here. Was in 2016. I got hired in officially in June of 2016. My last day at Bonefish Grill, my girlfriend of a year and a half, who was a host there, broke up with me. So I went into what was about to be the happiest period of my life to that point with the one of the sadder events. So I was pretty devastated, but I got over it very, very well. I wouldn't say I got over it very quickly, but I was distracted very quickly because the week before I was actually starting, so I was actually still unofficial technically. I wasn't getting paid for this, but I went and did it. I was at Sound Mind Sound Body at Wayne State, and it was a big event, right? And I finally got my opportunity to meet Jim Harbaugh. He'd already know who I was based off of just seeing me at press conferences, and I got a nice personal introduction from the aforementioned Shelly Kovacs. And we talked, and then like I went around and like took video and took pictures and all of these things. And so that felt like a nice little kickoff, and also getting to run into Steve Wiltfong, who had helped me to create this position, and Steve Lorenz was there, and he's the one who was my mentor and continued to be, and also pushed for that same thing. It was just a momentous occasion, right? The other part that happened was I was going, and the days leading up to that, the 2 days leading up to that, I went to Cass Tech to interview Donovan Peoples-Jones, Jalen Kelly, Powell Donovan Johnson, and Kaelon Gervin, because they had said, like, we want you to start this off with a bang. And I'm like, okay, I've got the perfect thing. We're going to do like a video series to kind of get into this. Now, I'd already done some video stuff. Like I did a video series before I was even on officially, when my ex-girlfriend and I were in California. We went to the Rose Bowl with David Long. He had committed and signed, but he wasn't on campus yet. And I interviewed him for about a half hour about about how he ended up at Michigan and some behind the scenes stuff. And it was a really cool moment. And so then here I am, like, I go to Cass Tech, and Thomas Wilcher is like, why don't you talk to this guy? Why don't you talk to this guy? Why don't you talk to this guy? That's a pretty standard procedure when you go to a high school. They know who you want to talk to, but they want their other guys that don't have offers to get some publicity. And sometimes it's fruitful, sometimes it's completely fruitless. But I understand the method to the madness. So I did that, and then I was like, all right, can I talk to the four that came here to talk to me? He's like, oh, they got track practice. I was like, I just drove an hour to Detroit. Like, what do you mean they got track practice? He's like, oh, they got track practice, but you can go. So they didn't have a track team, but these guys were, state champion, ended up being state champion track stars here. So that just meant going to another high school, using their track and just running a practice themselves. So I met up with one of their parents, and I sat there. They were telling me all about their recruitment, because none of these guys were committed anywhere at the point. So it ended up being a fun time. So I just sat there for like 3 hours, interacting with, watching, learning stuff about Donovan Peoples-Jones and the other guys, and all this hype behind them and all of that. So Wilcher told me to come back the next day. I did my sit-down interviews with them, and I published those. But so those came out the day that I started at 24/7 Sports. But what really was the big moment for me was it was the week after I had started. I had to fly out west to California to follow the satellite camps, right? So these were my first satellite camps outside of the like SMSB type stuff. So that was like a huge deal, right? Like getting to go out there. So obviously I was going out there to see Najee Harris. Now, I had a little bit of a relationship with Najee Harris because I did do a officially hired week with 24/7 Sports in January at the Army All-American Bowl week. I was there all week. I got to be a part of interviewing some of the recruits, taking pictures mostly was my job, but I interviewed some of the recruits for the Michigan site. I was the one who, Steve wrote the story, but I was the one that broke to him essentially like Devin Asiasi is he's gonna make another visit to Ann Arbor, and there was a couple other things that kind of came out of that no one knew at that time. And no one was even asking. I mean, Steve told me, like, ask Devin Asiasi some questions. No one's asking him about Michigan. No one thought that he was committing to Michigan. So I did that and everything. Anyway, I had met Najee Harris at and I had sent him pictures and everything when he came to the combine at the day before the game. So I had told Najee, like, hey, I'm coming out, assuming that you'll talk to me and whatever. Now, one interesting caveat with all of this is that Najee Harris he had an Instagram account, but he did not have a Twitter account. And there was someone that was pretending to be Najee Harris, and they were followed by all of the coaches, right? I had given Tyrone Wheatley a little bit of a heads up, like, hey, that's not Najee Harris. He's like, really? It's not? I'm like, no, that's not Najee Harris. It's like, man, I was just talking to that guy. I was like, no, you were talking to an imposter. But like, there was all these coaches, like, Mark D'Antonio was following it, Nick Saban was following it, like everybody was following this Twitter account that wasn't actually Najee Harris, but I knew better. So I told Najee I'm coming, and and he had told me to, like, yeah, tell Michigan that that's not me and whatever, and I was like, all right, when we'll get there, we'll spread the word a little bit. I'll get you on video talking about it so that everyone knows that that's not you. And he was like, all right, great. So I fly into San Francisco, and which I learned that San Francisco closes down really early because I couldn't get dinner after like 8:30 unless I wanted pizza, and I didn't want pizza. I was trying to watch my girlish figure, which is something that I haven't been doing the last couple of years. And the first day, I went to the Golden Gate Bridge. I went and actually interviewed Devin Asiasi, who was signed at that point but hadn't made it to campus. To kind of do the same thing as David Long. People didn't see a lot of that because I didn't have very good settings on my microphone, and a lot of it came out completely inaudible. So I did my little tour of San Francisco, and then the next day I first went to Sacramento, and went for what I thought was viral at the time. It really wasn't. I'll get more likes on my Michigan has arrived tweet from when they step off the bus today. But I got a picture of Jim Harbaugh wearing when he was in Sacramento, he was wearing the Colin Kaepernick jersey, and it was like, whoa, because he was wearing jerseys every single week. And it was just a cool thing. And interviewed a couple guys, DJ Johnson, who ended up at Oregon at that time, and Isaiah Foskey, who ended up at Notre Dame. Interviewed those guys and got to like interact with the coaches and everything. And it was a cool experience. So went directly from Sacramento to Antioch, where Najee Harris is, because they did 2 in one day, 2 camps. Take this really scenic route. It's really beautiful. And pull up at the same exact time as Jim Harbaugh. He and I are walking up. He's got chocolate milk with him. It's like typical, I'm still starstruck at this point of Jim Harbaugh. I'm being professional, but internally I'm fangirling. I'm not being professional whatsoever. And so then I walked up with him and go up there. I talked to Greg Madison. He's like, man, that was a beautiful drive, wasn't it? And I'm like, it was so scenic and picturesque. It was amazing. And I walk up to talk to Jay Harbaugh, and he's talking to the coach at Antioch. And he was like, yeah, this idiot told me that he's going to come here and interview Najee Harris. And I'm tired of these idiots. And he's like, yeah, this idiot's name was Isaiah Hole. I had just perfect timing. I'm standing there. I'm like, hi, I'm Isaiah Hole. He felt so embarrassed. It was just a wonderful moment. And Jay just was laughing. But then I got to go and watch Najee go through drills with Tyrone Wheatley. Everything felt like it was going really well. Really, this camp was really for Najee, right? There weren't really any other prospects at this camp that were likely to get Michigan offers. So it was all about Najee. But then we get to the end of it, and I'm like, all right, Najee. And he's like, oh, I don't do interviews. Like, dude, I just flew 2,000 miles. I don't like airplanes. I just flew 2,000 miles, and I'm not going to get interviewed. Like, let's at least get this video saying you don't have a Twitter account. So if you go way, way back on my Twitter, my Instagram in particular, you can probably find that video. Or if you go way back on my Twitter, you can probably find it as well. So that was that. I flew down to LA the next day for the camp that was 2 days from then. They went down to San Diego, did a camp there. I missed that one. And then I go to the Los Angeles one. That's my old stomping ground. So I got to hang out with some friends, and it was pretty cool. My friend Neil Gargiulo, comedian Emo Phillips. I'm sure some of you know who he is rather. And then, so you got to have a little bit of friend time, as well as get to kind of just take in the whole Michigan of it all, and then show up the next day. Jim Harbaugh's wearing his Kobe Bryant shirt, and that was the one that had Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and so it was really exciting. Jalen Hall, who ended up also committing to Oregon before getting into some pretty big legal trouble. Those were the big guys there. All in all, just a really cool experience to start out everything. That made everything feel really, really real. But there was something else that was hanging really heavy on my heart during that trip, and that's where we're going to get into the ties that bind. We're going to talk about that here in just a moment. Before we do, get ready for the NFL season that is underway. Week 1 is done. First game of week 2 is under the belt. More is coming on Sunday. There's incredible offers from FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off of NFL Sunday Ticket. Remember, it's on YouTube TV now, so you can get $100 off there. And I've heard that it's an unparalleled experience. It's much better than it used to be. So now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use, and you can bet on everything from spreads to player props and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Kick off the NFL season with an offer you don't want to miss. FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. All right, I don't know if the video of this is going to be up until late tonight, to be honest, just because I've got to leave in like 20 minutes. So I say that if you're listening to audio and you're like, I want to see video. Not that there's anything. It's just me sitting in my my attire that I'm going to wear to the game, hoping I'm not going to be too hot in a hoodie. But kind of hard to plan this time of year for a night game. So rather be too hot than too cold. Anyhow, so ties that bind. The week that I got hired officially, that I started, was Father's Day. I was set to leave for San Francisco. I believe it was like a Wednesday or a Thursday, and Saturday on Father's Day. I can only say that it was God that spoke to me in this moment, and I wasn't really kind of used to hearing His voice, but He had told me, like, make sure like that you go, number one, because like my father lives in California. I've never had a close relationship with him. So Father's Day here in Michigan was all about my grandpa and just spending time with family in general. But something told me, like, make sure you spend time with your Uncle Mike today and cherish every moment. So I went, and we had a great time, and he was super excited as someone who also graduated from Michigan, and he was asking me all kinds of questions about, like, when's Michigan going to get Donovan Peoples-Jones? And like he'd seen him doing some of the track stuff, because he knew everything about high school football in the state of Michigan. He was just a guy that paid attention to everything. And not just high school football, high school sports. He was just into it. My Uncle Mike was a guy who, he took me to my first Detroit Tigers game. He took me to several Detroit Tigers games. It was either him or my grandpa. Now, my Uncle Donnie took me to Atlanta Braves games when I would go down in the summer to spend time with he and my Aunt Dee Dee and Marietta. But my Uncle Mike was the one he was the one present for baseball, for basketball. He's the one who taught me how to be into sports. He had bought me tickets to go to what would have been my second Lions game, but I ended up being sick and couldn't go. But that was my relation with sports, and he really tried to father me, and I never really appreciated him in the same way that I appreciated some other people that were in my family, because maybe like some of them were more, quote, fun, right? Like they were the life of the party. But my Uncle Mike was steadfast, and he was an example, and he showed up, and he was there. And I in that day, I kind of told him what he meant to me. Well, the next morning I woke up, and my mom said, your Uncle Mike died. Actually, she just said Mike died. And I'm like, Mike who? And she's like, your Uncle Mike. And it was a shocking moment, and it kind of all made sense as to why I knew I needed that moment. But he was so excited about the fact that I was going to be going to Los Angeles and to San Francisco for these satellite camps, because he was asking about Najee Harris. He was asking about all of this, and he was telling me how proud of me he was. So I still went through with the trip instead of staying for the funeral. I know that probably would draw the ire of some, but everyone in my family kind of said he would want you to go, so you should keep that. You should keep going, right? You're doing what he wishes he could do. But I remember driving from Sacramento to Antioch and crying, and I called my Aunt Lori, because one of the things that happened when I showed up to Sacramento, after I had posted about it on Twitter that my Uncle Mike had passed away, Jay Harbaugh and some of the other coaches came up and gave me a hug, and they said, "We're so sorry about your Uncle Mike." When he had his funeral on that Saturday, and now this wasn't because of my relationship with the coaches, it was more because Kenny Allen went to the same high school as my cousins. He had a card, like a big poster, that was signed by every single Michigan player on the team. Michigan means something. The family that is Michigan means something. When I started going to games, because my first real experience in media I didn't even cover, it was 2007. I was a senior at Michigan, and I worked for ESPN for the Michigan-Minnesota game. Helped them set up the cameras and everything before the game, and during the game I got to stand on the sidelines and just watch, and went up to the press box and just was like enjoying it all. And all the while I'm taking pictures, not because it was as much of a precious moment to me, but because I wanted to show my grandfather, because these are things that he would have loved to see that he had never gotten to see. You're right, getting the behind the scenes look. And Michigan was everything to my grandpa. And he did raise me like a child. And I remember, I've said this a couple times, it's funny. Being down at, he came and visited me in LA in 2009, and we went to watch the Michigan State game at South, which doesn't exist anymore, but it was in Santa Monica. It was the Michigan Watch Bar for Los Angeles, and we watched that game, and he says in the middle of the game, when I was at Michigan, Fritz Chrysler was the head coach. I'm like, don't say that too loud to people. But he was in the area for about 6 weeks. They were mostly in Palm Springs. I would drive out to Palm Springs every single weekend to watch the Michigan games. I watched the Indiana game, the Michigan State game. He came to LA for the Michigan State game. This was 2010. So this was a different visit. But nonetheless, he'd been out a bit. So Michigan is, I might not root for Michigan the way that you do, you who watch or listen to this, but because at some point I realized to be effective at my job, I had to kill that part of me. But it doesn't mean it's any less meaningful, because family is what started it, and family is what continues it. And yeah, that's the story. Anyway, that's going to do it for this episode. We will be back. Could be Sunday, could be Monday. It'll be one or the other. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll be back soon. Enjoy the game. If you're watching or listening to this before, peace.